Yellow light 5, red 40, blue number 2, set up.
That actually wasn't a quarterback cadence. Those are actually the chemical dyes that we find in our Kool-Aid, Pop-Tarts, Fruit Loops, Skittles, Gushers, Gatorade, soda, Doritos. Pretty much anything you find that has those abnormally bright colors contains chemical dyes.
The European Union posted, and they said since 2010, the European Union has required warning labels on foods with artificial dyes stating that they may have an adverse effect on activity and attention in children. But here in the United States, the FDA continues to state that artificial food dyes are safe and ADHD diagnoses are on the rise. So I think that that's the biggest thing that I would like to point out, because a lot of these artificial dyes are in children's foods, especially because they tend to draw their attention in, and they look fun, but they actually could have some very
Harmful effects, obviously.
Absolutely.
I mean, from what if they're banned in one union, one part of the world, there's probably a reason behind that, and why it's allowed here. Those are the questions we got to start raising, guys, because there's some things that we're finding out that are allowed in certain countries but aren't allowed in other countries. So I feel like with food, it should be pretty universal across the board, right? I mean, if it's banned in one place, shouldn't it be banned in another place? I mean, I don't think that they have a special enzyme, or we have a special enzyme that people in other countries don't. We're all from one source, so we all have the same component. So it just really doesn't make any sense to me why we haven't questioned these things, or maybe we just don't know enough.
Absolutely, and I think it wraps back around. I think parents love their children, and
Absolutely.
I think that parents want to do whatever they think is the best thing for their children.
It's
And
going to make them happy too.
Absolutely, and
Absolutely.
I think people in general think that if it's on the shelves, it's been cleared by our FDA,
Of
so
course,
it must
it's
be
safe.
safe.
It's got to be safe. If it's on our shelves, it's got to be safe, and that's unfortunately that's a misconception, guys, that we got to get over. Because look at us, we're sicker than ever. Yet we're supposed to be one of the most developed nations, and it just doesn't make sense.
And our children have lots of issues.
Lots of issues. I mean, the childhood obesity rate is through the roof as well. So we look at ADHD, as you mentioned, based off of the research. So, I mean, when we're going to grab those Fruity Pebbles or those tricks, we might want to reconsider the options that we're choosing for our kids. Those Gushers, I used to crush those things when I was a
Me
kid.
too.
Fruit roll-ups, I used to crush those things when I was a kid. And you know what? It's funny. I was actually diagnosed with ADD. So I don't feel like I'm ADD. Maybe I am. I don't know. But the point is that you start to look at the effects that certain things may have had on your life based off of research, and it kind of comes together full circle why we have the problems that we have. So we can't ignore them, guys.
I'm looking for something that's gonna keep me light and sexy. This'll do.
So do you care to tell them why you slapped the yogurt out of my hands?
The reality is products labeled low calorie, light, diet, or sugar-free likely contain sugar additives, also known as artificial sweeteners. The main ones are aspartame, sucralose, and saccharin. In theory, these no-calorie artificial sweeteners seem great. However, when things seem too good to be true, that's usually the case.
Think about the amount of diet food that's out there compared to the obesity rate. Well, the obesity rate continues to rise, but the diet food keeps coming out as well.
Exactly, so I did some research. So why is this? Many studies have shown artificial sweeteners actually stimulate appetite and increase cravings for carbs. In addition, they've shown to cause metabolic dysfunction that promotes fat storage and weight gain.
That's crazy. Next, we want to talk about what's making America fat. It's in everything. from Cokes, ketchups to Campbell's soup, and that's high fructose corn syrup. We've done some research on this. Do you care to tell them what we found and discovered about it?
Absolutely. I mean, what I would like to touch on first is to explain, since the introduction of high fructose corn syrup, we have seen our diabetes rate increase sevenfold. Our obesity rate has increased by 3 times the amount that it was before.
Yeah, I mean, it's really sugar, but it's not really sugar because our body doesn't recognize it in the same format or the same way, right?
Absolutely. So the difference is real cane sugar is 2 molecules that are tightly bound together. And we have an enzyme in our body when it goes through digestion that breaks that down. And because it's tightly bound, it actually requires digestion, and after that it's absorbed by our body. Well, the difference with high fructose corn syrup is that it's not, because it's an industrial process and not natural, it's not tightly bound together, therefore it doesn't require digestion in the body, and it goes straight into our bloodstream. And the fructose actually stimulates the liver to produce fats like triglycerides and cholesterol.
Gotcha. And so the sugar doesn't do the same thing because it's actually digested.
It goes through a
as-
digestion process,
Right.
whereas high fructose corn syrup, because it's not tightly bound together, it doesn't require breaking down.
Okay, gotcha.
So,
it's
so it just goes straight to our blood and straight to our liver, whereas real sugar doesn't
okay.
do that.
Gotcha.
Real sugar actually has
goes
to go
through its natural processes
of
the
digestion,
body.
and then it's
Gotcha.
absorbed
I see
by
what
the
you're saying.
body.
I see what you're
But
saying.
when this stuff is ingested, it goes to our blood and to our liver.
Okay, gotcha.
And it causes our liver to produce fat, and when it goes into our bloodstream, it spikes the blood sugar levels, which our pancreas then produces insulin,
Right.
and insulin is fat storage. It stores fat.
Yeah, and I mean, it makes you wonder why they even put it in some of the products that they do. I mean, we were at Walmart and we saw it was in tartar sauce. and
Miracle Whip.
Miracle Whip. We saw it was in Campbell's soup. I mean, it's, like I said, it's in everything. But Coke is one of the big boys that loves to use high fructose corn syrup, and really pretty much any soda manufacturer pretty much loves high fructose corn syrup as their go-to.
Absolutely, and I think it's very interesting that a lot of food manufacturers now are beginning to back out of using high fructose corn syrup because of the backlash it's received. But there's still a lot of propaganda surrounding it out there, especially on page 1 of Google.
Yeah, we did that Google search, and they were basically saying there's no known harmful effects of high fructose corn syrup or something along those lines.
Well, in fact, they actually just say that it's the exact same as cane sugar.
Right. Okay.
And this is coming from the Corn Refiners Association, the
Right.
same association that is producing this stuff.
They don't have a dog in the fight. And you know, it's funny because you research a Dr. Hyman. I think we talked about him, and he goes into the problems with high fructose corn syrup and what it's doing to us. And basically, we've become human experiments based off of the amount of chemically enhanced food that is sitting on our shelves, and we don't know the long-term effects of it. Right?
Absolutely, because it said about 10,000 years ago, their ancestors took in about 20 teaspoons of sugar per year.
Per year, right?
And in one 20-ounce soda, that's about 17 teaspoons. So we are reaching
And
what
how
they
many-
did in 1 year in one soda.
Right, and how many's in this, like the 2 liter?
Almost 60 teaspoons.
62 teaspoons of high fructose corn syrup, but sugar, if that's what they're calling it. Yeah, and I mean, this is a problem, guys. I mean, this is the reason why we're not getting results. You know, if you have that soda addiction, unfortunately, that's going to be the reason why you're not able to cut weight. You know, if you're buying the wrong ketchup products, you really just got to look at the ingredients. And I think the biggest thing is that we've been fooled at looking at the front of the labels and seeing, oh, it doesn't have this, no preservatives, this, that, and the other. And then we turn it around and they highlight, you know, the nutritional value label, right? but we fail to really make mention or pay attention to the actual ingredients that are being put in there. And that's the reason why I feel that we're having a problem with weight loss, is because we're looking at the carbs and the calories and this, that, and the other, but we're not paying attention to the actual chemicals that are in the food. And once again, we don't know the long-term effects of these chemicals, but I can tell you that based off of looking at America and their diets, I can see that there's a big problem, and I think anybody can see that there's a big problem, and we have to attribute it to something within our food.
Absolutely. I mean, if you look at this, the nutrition facts is huge. And this is what grabs people's attention.
Right.
But if you look down here, there's like maybe 1,000 chemicals in it. None of which are really food.
And I'll zoom up and I'll show you guys what we're talking about. But you know, you can go to any grocery store and look on your shelves and see what they're actually putting in our food. And honestly, guys, if it sounds like a science experiment, we probably shouldn't be consuming it. But once again, if you're not even taking that next step to actually pay attention to the labels, you're missing out on what maybe is the culprit to some of your weight loss problems.
Absolutely. And I think most importantly, the biggest reason to avoid products with high fructose corn syrup is because they are a marker of food that is of poor quality. It's nutritionally depleted through the process, and it's full of empty calories and artificial ingredients.
Well, and the process of how it's produced is pretty much a secret, right? They're not actually telling, like even scientists have asked to do research on high fructose corn syrup, and the manufacturers of high fructose corn syrup are unwilling to actually give them a product to do any research on, from what I understand. There was a story you said that a woman had to sneak her way into getting some so they could test it. What was that
Well,
about?
yeah, I mean, it's extracted from corn stalks, but after that, the process is very, very secret. There was a lady that was wanting to test for other contaminants in high fructose corn syrup, and she had reached out and never received a response. However, she kind of came back in a different way and said that she was working for a large, a new soda producer, and that they were thinking about using the product. And then she was sent some, so.
She got it immediately, of course. So, I mean, obviously it boils down to profit, and if things are a secret, I just don't understand why it's being allowed to be put in our food. And really, I mean, we got to look at the FDA for that too, as well. You know, why, if this is a secret and we can't be told what it's made of or what the process is, why is it allowed to be on our shelves? And what is there to hide is the better question. So,
I mean, and not to mention that the majority of all the corn, 90% of the corn in this country is genetically modified.
on top of that,
So you have to think about that as well. This is coming from corn, and our corn is genetically modified, so that's just a little bit more icing on the cake.
and if you're not aware of what GMOs are, you can check out our blog at www.unplug-yourself.com. We talk about GMOs, genetically modified, and hey, the reason why we're doing this is because we feel like there needs to be a source of awareness from somewhere. And there's plenty of websites that are out there. If you guys want to do your research, we're not the only ones that are talking about this stuff. But we feel like we're not getting it from our authority figures that we should be. And so somebody has to start talking about this stuff to kind of get the wheel rolling, if you will, the wheels turning. Because we have a problem, guys, and we're being treated like lab rats at this point. I mean, the ingredients that are being put in this food is really... It's really coming to a point where we have to start asking some questions.
And we have to take responsibility into our own hands, and we can't depend on the FDA or nutritional experts or healthcare providers or anybody to protect us anymore, because it's past that.
In conclusion, it's imperative we raise our awareness on what we're eating. With convenience being the top priority in combination with slick marketing, has caused us to ignore the basics. In this video, we wanted to highlight some of the potential main chemical contributors to many of the problems we face today, especially in the United States. From obesity, diabetes, ADHD, cancer, inflammation, etc. In fact, most of these chemicals aren't allowed in many other countries. The best way to avoid chemicals altogether is by avoiding processed food in general. But the good news is There are many products that are out there that are actually using real ingredients and real food. Let us show you.